Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. A lot of things happening from my perspective, at least, and I think from many people's perspective, in regards to the Stephan Stern's, of course, the Madeline Soto case. And he is scheduled to go on trial May 5th for the first half of this case, which we, of course, know is the SA part of all the bad photos that were found on his cell phone. And that has become a huge legal point, at least for his defense, who are trying to get it thrown out, saying that the detective should have gotten a search warrant. She, in fact, even says, would you give me permission to go into your phone, or should I get a search warrant? He goes, no, I'll give you permission. You know, he gives her permission to go into his cell phone. Consent is a waiver of the Fourth Amendment rights. If you give someone consent to search, that's good. The argument that the defense would make is that, oh, the police in their very role as police are intimidating. And just the fact that they're asking should be viewed as an order. And that's the way the defense will probably go with this. But that will be all up to the judge. And I cannot see the judge throwing out the consent search of that phone, which led to the search warrant. Because once the detective in this case found those bad photos on the phone, she obtained a search warrant to continue the search. And that is what found the, whatever it was, 15,000 images, 17,000 images that were downloaded or backed up on Google. So that is the whole part of this case, of course, that Stephan Stern's, of course, thought I did a factory reset on my phone. He thought he got rid of all of those bad photos. But in fact, he did not. So that is the first part of this case that is going to be tried on May 5th. And that part, the defense attorney has just very recently made over 70 motions to try to get things thrown out. I don't think that's going to occur, but the judge is one busy bee right now, answering these 70 motions. I'm going to play this quick little clip from the local news.
Soto is getting ready for his trial.
Stephan Stern's attorneys are asking a judge to throw out evidence that investigators found on his cell phone and an online account. West 2's Spencer Tracy explains why Stearns believes he had no choice but to hand over his phone.
I'm going to leave it at that because they say the words that we're not supposed to say. And so that's their argument, that they're saying that, oh, the police ordered me. They didn't. When you hear the detective say, can I go into your phone? Do I have your permission? And he says yes. So that's what we're going to go over. We're also going to go over during this show today of how important the interrogation is of Stephan Stern. And not just the fact that he really didn't implicate himself because he lied throughout the whole thing, but all of his lies will show the jury who he really is. And when they compare the lies that he told during the interrogation with the actual evidence, it'll be so powerful to the jury. And I'm sure they would love to have this thrown out too. Anyway, folks, hold on to your seats, hold on to your hats, hold on to your loved ones, hold on to your cup of coffee, hold on to your service dog. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off the cuff zone, the police off the cuff zone.
There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
And now a word from our sponsor, Mando Whole Body Deodorant. The thing I like most about Mando Body Deodorant is that it lasts all day and leaves me feeling clean and fresh. It doesn't quit even under the harshest heat and humidity. The fresh feeling keeps me dry and confident. No need to worry about unsightly sweat stains. Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. As a special offer for listeners, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% of your starter pack. Use code POLICE, POLICE in capital letters at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. Joining me tonight is, I always feel so thrilled to have him with me because he's such a person and a man of reason. And I want to welcome to the show retired NYPD Sergeant, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, attorney. Welcome to the show, Professor Mike Geary. Welcome, Mike.
Bill, good to see you. Thank you for having me on tonight. Thank you.
I know you made a quick beeline from the Jersey Shore with the horrible weather to come back to New York to make it to the show. I want to thank you for that. So, Mike, the big issues we're going to look at tonight, we're going to look at the interrogation again, but we're going to look at some of the motions. It's 70 motions. That's when an attorney is taking something and just throwing it at the wall and hopes that some things stick. But the big thing that this attorney is trying to get thrown out, which we sort of, is the permission to search his cell phone. Your thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, Bill, that is the entire crux of the prosecution's case, is those images on that cell phone. And how did they get those images? The Stephan Stern is arguing that the police were intimidating, and he didn't know when they asked, do you mind if I take a look at your phone? Can I take a look at your phone? Can I look at it? Whatever. However, they said it in those words, and we're going to hear it. And he said yes. I think he said yes several times. He's claiming that he was intimidated and that perhaps, that they should have told him a little bit about a constitutional law. Like, you can say, no, we're asking you. Like, no, they don't have to be a teacher. We don't have to teach our constitutional law. But he's saying that he had no real idea that he could actually say no, and he felt intimidated. Once the police Detective Tagler is her name, Maria Tagler. She was fantastic. What a job she did on this case. Once she looked at those, originally looked at the text messages and the images, she stopped. She got a search warrant. She did it correctly. She did a fantastic job.
Mike, this is from the Osceola Press, a local newspaper, the Osceola News Gazette. According to the Orange County Sheriff's Office, it was a purported consent for its examination at 1:30 a.m. on February 27th. The defense notes the sheriff's detective asked Stearns for consent to search the phone. Or do I need to get a search warrant? She actually asked Stearns that.
Right.
She cites the Fourth Amendment, which protects against unreasonable search and seizure. A number of the motions work to eliminate the death penalty for a myriad of reasons. One defense position cites Florida statutes that allow for capital punishment unconstitutional, citing articles and amendments to the state and U.S. Constitution. Another cites the process of death qualification impairs the impartiality of the jury. So there's many motions being filed by this defense, but the crux of this whole thing, the biggest motion, of course, is the motion to get the evidence tossed out. And what would that do to this case? If this judge ruled, yes, he's going to toss out the consent search, that would also, the fruits of the poisonous tree doctrine would then throw out the search warrant. So what would we have? This case would have to be dismissed, I think.
Billy, possibly, because if you take a look at that and you say, yeah, say if the judge agrees with the defense's motion and say they did not get proper consent because there may have been some intimidation going on, whatever, and therefore we're going to throw out everything on the phone, everything, text messages, images, pictures, whatever. Then they can also then say, beyond that, because those pictures established him as a criminal doing SA to her, we would, without that, we would not have a thought that he had them on another drive or another computer. So it may throw all of that evidence out. And the only way the prosecution can, if they actually get everything thrown out on the cell phone and want to salvage everything that they can get that they have on the hard drives, they would have to show that they got the suspicion about him being involved in SA from an independent source. And so that would be really difficult to do. It's possible, but if the defense prevails in their motion to suppress the evidence in the phone, it's possible, like set of dominoes, the entire case can get lost. It's very, very, very difficult to have a case with all that information, all that evidence lost.
From the chat, Debbie Van Martyr been wanting to hear what Mike says about this phone thing. That dude, Gavin Fish, says it might get thrown out because a cop asked to look at settings, not pictures, Fourth Amendment. Debbie, you know something? I'm going to answer it too, but I'm going to let Mike answer it after me since he is the guy with the law degree. Consent searches are okay. I would hope that along with the consent search, she had a little form that we used to use on the NYPD that the person signs it. And, this is the time, this is the date. At this time and date, I asked Stephan Stern if I could look in his cell phone, and he answered yes. And you have him sign that. That way, it's it's documented. It's not, and it's also, we're going to listen to the audio of him giving permission. And so I don't see, could it happen? Yes, but I don't see this judge throwing this out. I really don't. Let me play the audio of it.
While I was hanging out with Jen might know. I looked at her and said, what did I just do?
Okay.
She might know better. I don't know what time it was. It was when I was here with Jen.
Okay. I don't think I have any other questions. Do you, Louis?
I don't know where my head was yesterday. It was so far up my backside.
That's okay. We understand. In the meantime, while we're waiting for all this to get sorted out, I am going to hold on to your phone, okay? I'll give it back to you when we're done.
Okay.
Okay? Do you have any questions for us?
How long are you going to need my phone?
I'm not sure. I'm waiting for my supervisor to call me.
My dad. It's just my dad's using that to get a hold of me and get updates.
Yeah, they can call Jen's phone.
Okay.
Did the other detective give you his business card?
I believe so.
Okay, well, here's mine in case you want it for any reason.
Okay.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Do you swear that everything you told us is true?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for your time. We appreciate it. I know it's a little hectic right now. And then I know you were about to head somewhere. If you can just hang tight and refrain from going back in your car, please.
Oh, yeah, it's fine. I was actually going to move it over a spot.
No, just leave it here. It's fine. Thank you.
Central Florida, I'm sure you're aware.
Case number 24-11313. Today's date is February 28th, 2024. The time is 00:16 hours. Speaking with Stephan again. Okay. So, as you guys know, they have, right? Mm-hmm. They've been going through the phone, and they noticed that there was like a lot of messages between you and can you explain to me what your relationship is between?
Yeah.
This is obviously redacted, excuse me, right now.
Mostly things like, when you're going to call us, when you're going to come up here and visit, hey, poopy head, get online, things like that.
Okay. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Your phone. I told you that I was gonna hold on to it, and that we would like to download your phone, right?
Okay.
Is this something that I have your consent to do, or do I need to get a search warrant for your phone?
It should be fine.
You're okay with us going through your phone?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I have the PIN to your phone?
42586.
Okay, not only did he give her permission,
Mhm.
but he gave her the PIN number to get into the phone.
Right.
So what more of a consent would you need? And the only argument I could see, Mike, is if the argument that defense attorneys frequently make was that they're so intimidated by the police that it was given forth as an order. And that certainly was not asked as an order. She was very sweet, and she said, would you mind if we look through your phone? I don't know if that was the exact language she used, but it certainly wasn't an order. It certainly wasn't intimidating. Your thoughts?
Bill, I agree. I think Mr. Fish, when he discussed that somewhere, and he said it might be a violation, it might get thrown out because of the word setting. I really didn't see the word setting being really mentioned, except Stephan Stern saying he reset the phone, that sort of thing. But it doesn't seem that he limited in any way, saying, okay, I don't mind you looking at my phone, but you could only look at my text messages, but you can't look at my pictures. He didn't limit that consent in any way, shape, or form. So I don't think that there is a problem here whatsoever. The judge is going to listen to that, look and make sure the transcript matches what he hears, and then make his decision. And I really don't think that this is going to be a problem whatsoever. They got, and he even said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I factory reset my phone. I wasn't paying attention. I don't even know when I did it." It really didn't seem like he was really concerned whatsoever. And Detective Tagler, who did a fantastic job, it was like she talked to him several times about it, like at least twice about it. Like, we'd like to look at your phone. Do you mind if we look at your phone? Would you get permission? Or do we need to get a search warrant? Oh, by the way, what's your PIN number? There were times, there was a couple of minutes there where he could have said, I don't want it. I've decided no. He could have. He said he didn't do it.
Debbie Van Moore, I was typing an answer to you. She wrote that Fish thinks otherwise. I agree with you, but Mike, but Fish thought otherwise. Thank you. Fish is not law enforcement, nor is he an attorney. He's a journalist. And I'm not saying that disqualifies him from knowing what he's talking about, but I don't think he has any experience with this. And I would be quite shocked, quite surprised if the judge ruled in favor of the defense on this. The other part of this, and Mike and I mentioned it, you hear the term fruits of the poisonous tree. Mm-hmm. If he throws out the consent search, he threw out the search warrant too, because the search warrant was based on what if he ruled against it would be the fruits of the poisonous tree, that any evidence that came after the consent search would be suppressed, as well as the evidence that was that the defense put their motion in to suppress. So I would be very, very surprised if that happened. If it does happen, the whole case would be in jeopardy, Mike.
Yeah, that's why I don't think so. And just for instance, just say, for argument's sake, that when Stephan Stern gave permission, that he was only really given permission because he thought they were talking about looking at the text messages, and he wasn't thinking that he was giving them permission to look at everything. Just say that was the case. Say there was misunderstanding between what he thought he was consenting to and to what Detective Tagler thought he was consenting to. Well, even if that is the case, Detective Tagler cures whatever misunderstanding there is, because she then goes to get a search warrant. And so she gets the search warrant. And so to me, that would cure any sort of issue that may have been caused by miscommunication. Yeah, I don't see the judge throwing this out whatsoever. It was really clear what she said, and he said yes several times. He gives the PIN number. He had a chance to say no, I don't really think so. He was so sure because he factory reset his phone. He thought he reset it properly, that there'd be nothing on it. You know, very, very strange, but he gave permission and he went right along with it. The police do not have to, like the Miranda rule tell you, anything you say can and will be used against in the court of law. You don't have that in the Fourth Amendment when it comes to consent. They could just ask, can I search? Do you mind if we search? If the answer is yes, that's it.
Yes, and you know something, I as I said, and I'll repeat myself a number of times, I would be very, very surprised if the judge threw this out, because it would, in essence, throw the entire case out, and then also it could cause problems with the murder case, which is supposed to occur in September of this year, which probably will be pushed off later. But I believe the date of the trial for the murder case is September 22nd. So yes, this could impact all of those things. And the other thing, Mike, you mentioned is that Stephan Stern's factory reset his phone for a reason. He thought he was destroying evidence. He thought he was getting rid of all the evidence. And guess what? He didn't do it. He didn't get it, you know, in his voice. He wasn't able to do that. So he meant to destroy all the evidence, to get rid of all the evidence. And that was probably the reason that he so willingly gave permission to the detectives to search it.
That's right. That's right. He was confident that there was going to be nothing on that phone whatsoever. And he had no clue that there would be pictures. And so here you have him saying, yeah, go ahead. You know, like, it's not a big deal. Just, you know, when will I get the phone back? That's all he really asked. He didn't say, I'd like to really speak to an attorney about this. I'm really concerned about this. What are you searching for? You know, nothing like that. He didn't ask any qualifying questions to demonstrate any sort of concern or reticence on his part whatsoever. He went right along willingly with it. And again, even if there was misunderstanding, she cures it by getting a search warrant from a judge. What trial judge deciding on the admissibility of evidence is going to tell a cop, you know, you messed up by getting a search warrant for the phone after what you thought you had consent to do so? Yeah, I don't see this being thrown out whatsoever.
No, I don't either. Mike, this is I want to play this. This is Mike and I 6 months ago.
Okay.
Talking about the interrogation of Stephan Stern's. And we were highly critical of it. And maybe if you look at this, I don't know if Mike and I look 6 months older or not, but this is from 6 months ago from our show. Sarge, I'm not going to lie. I'm jealous you got to do this. I'm also very grateful that it was you and not me. It's all very confusing. It looks like an extreme sport, maybe skydiving. You know, Kylie, I had the A team in the Manhattan North Homicide Squad, and my detectives were fantastic. And some of them were better interviewers than others. There was a couple of them that were just superb, just superb interviewers. And what a boss in homicide has to know to do also is watch the interview. You can watch it through the two-way glass outside, and people don't know you're watching. And I actually meant to say one-way glass. I don't know why I said two. It's one-way glass because the perp can't see you. You can see him. If it looks like the detectives hit a wall, or if it looks like the detectives may benefit by taking a break, you can interrupt it. And it's not a good thing to interrupt it per se, because that can ruin the flow of a detective that's doing an outstanding interview. But I think in this case, there should have been a meeting before they went in with him, because I think they really didn't focus on the right thing. They should have focused on the murder and where Maddie's body was, not on the images on his phone, because they didn't need him to, as I said, I'm beating a dead horse here. They didn't need him to confess to that. They got it. They got him with that. I skipped ahead because I don't want to go through this whole interview, so we'll go back to it. But I skipped ahead quite a bit.
Office, which has kind of been what she's been doing for the past working a new schedule. So we started making all the calls. No one had seen her yet. So that's when we started getting a lot more concerned and panicked. She drove around a little more, looking for her, looking along the walking paths, and didn't see anything but her.
You know, the detectives know he's
Not
lying.
there, waited around, not there, went back to the school, not there. At that point, the whole family started rallying.
You know, guys, I just like you all so you know what a detective is looking at. Watching his body language. His body language says, lie, lie, lie. I am a liar. I am a liar. His arms folded in front of him, show a defensive posture. Any amateur body language reader could see that.
Up and going to I think that it was around that.
Going back to school, how was she like on the car ride there?
Calmed down, sleeping. Sleeping along the way. She does that.
Folks, I know, and I mentioned this before, but Stephan Stern has a habit of not looking the person in the eye who he's talking to. And I know some people in the chat says, oh, that could be a cultural thing. No, it's not a cultural thing here. It's a perp thing here. He's a piece of shit, and he can't look in the eyes of the person in authority who's asking him questions. And that is significant. And in addition, a lot of you guys in the chat are mentioning, yes, he's got his arms folded across his chest the entire time, which is a defensive posture, a defiant posture, and a posture that indicates that you're not telling the truth. So all of these things that the detective has to be reading. He has to be reading. And as he starts feeding him with certain things and Stern starts to lie, you know, even he's lying about, oh, she was sleeping. She slept the whole way. You know, she slept because she was dead. You know, at some point, proverbially, if the detective would have hit him with a left hook with that and said, yeah, you know why she appeared to be sleeping? Because she was dead. That's why. And then they could have presented him with all of the information that they had. But letting this little weasel lie, again, he's feeling like he's in control. Look, he's lying. He thinks he's getting over. But they were just, to me, again, beating a dead horse, they were too nice to him.
How often have you?
Not often, honestly. This might have been my third or fourth morning school run. I'm not normally the one to do it.
And on the other occasions, has she had you drop her off in and around the same location, or how does that?
She has this image thing. It's just she only likes to be seen getting out of certain cars in front of the school. But I guess kind of a hoopty, and she's embarrassing. Right?
Lincoln?
Nice looking Sentra. So yeah.
You know, I just got to mention this. Courtney from the chat, great point. According to Jennifer Soto, she could count the times Maddie slept alone with Stephan Stern, and yet there were 1,600 pics, actually 1,700 pics or videos over 4 years. She is a pathological liar. You know something, Courtney? You're 100% right.
That's right.
That's a great point.
Yeah, this is not the first time she's asked me to drop her off a little ways down so she could walk up and look cool.
So you say she was conked out on the way there. You said you took her to school, or you were on her way to school. You needed to turn around to get your clicker.
Correct.
Was she sleeping then too?
She was.
Okay.
So, folks, just so you know, this is very helpful if they could play this at his trial, because they could explain to the jury she was already dead. And you see how he's answering, right? He's lying. Everything he's saying is a lie. So even though it appears that, oh, this interrogation, they didn't get him to admit or confess, it's very, very helpful because he is a liar. And the jury's going to be shown this, and they're going to know what the truth is, and they're going to see exactly who this guy is.
It had been an early morning.
Guys, there's another lie. I needed to go get my clicker. No, he had the clicker in his hand, according to the security guard. Yet they may not have gotten that information in the most timely fashion. But he had the clicker in his hand when he went back into the complex at 08:19 on that morning. And that was a total fabricated bullshit story. Another one.
So I figured it'd be fine to let her sleep in the car ride.
Okay. When you got back to the apartment complex, did you go in the front gate, or because I know there's the front entrance and then the back entrance?
When I came back after forgetting my phone,
Yeah. So which way did you leave?
I would have had to go in the front.
He just said now that he forgot his phone. First it was he forgot his clicker. Now all of a sudden it's his phone. It's his phone and his clicker. Is what else did you forget? You know? So truths start coming out, or more lies start coming out. This is when they needed to bear down and maybe perhaps change strategy. Someone in the chat is a little confused. DM, we're playing an interview we did 6 months ago. That's why you see 2 mics and 2 bills in the chat, because we're just using our own work because we thought this was pretty damn good work to critique this interrogation, and we're showing it to you now. And I apologize. I'll explain. That's why there's 2 bills and 2 Mike Gearys there.
Okay.
And the guy scanned it. And I got in and got my fob and left. I don't remember if I left out the front or the back.
Did you stop anywhere else No.
Not that I recall, no.
Okay. Did you take any trash out from the apartment?
The night before, I think I did.
I love when people look at the sky as if the sky is going to give them the answer, because he's stalling for time, and that's also a sign of deceitfulness.
I'm not sure. I took the trash out at some point, but I don't remember if it was the night before or it was the morning of. Yeah, sometimes we get trash bags piling up by the door. To see them.
Is there like a common trash place, or like is there take their trash too?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that where you took the trash out?
Yeah.
Okay. And you don't remember if that was Sunday night or Monday morning?
You could say night.
So what the detective was trying to get him to do there was to admit all the things, or to lie about all the things the detective knows to be true. He already knows all the evidence. He already knows that Stephan Stern is telling this story, but he knows that Madeline was dead in the car, and that he leaves with her dead in the car. He comes back into the place to get his clicker, and she's dead in the passenger seat, because later on, they see the evidence of him pulling into a hotel parking lot and him carrying her body out of the passenger seat and throwing her in the trunk. So this whole interview is an absolute lie. And in that way, these 2 detectives did a good job. They laid down a web of lies for him to tell. And they just let him hang himself with his own rope, which he did. And this can be used in the trial, the first trial, the SA trial. And I just think it's very powerful. It's a very powerful interview in that way, And I had said that I wish they had gone after, used the truth that they knew to go after him and to weaken him and to get him to confess to the murder, which he might not have done anyway. But they should have at least gave it a shot. Mike?
Yeah, Bill, chronologically, this interview that we see here on video was the day after he gave consent to Detective Tagler. So therefore, they knew where they were going with this. They knew everything. They'd seen the pictures. So they knew what was up with this guy. And as you say, they gave him enough rope. They let him just tell his tale. And they give him enough rope and he hangs himself legally because, as you say, show this to the jury and explain. And of course, the chronological occurrence of what happened to poor Maddie. And everyone in that jury is going to see that he's talking about her being totally conked out when he's driving to school. Oh, I got to get my clicker, driving all the way back. Why does he have to get his clicker if he's just a couple of blocks from school? What is so important about the clicker? It's strange about that. But he says, yeah, she's completely conked out. What 13-year-old is conked out at that hour of the morning? But he's trying to, come up with an explanation in case anybody had saw her that she was sleeping. But, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. They did a good job with that, but they didn't take that final run at him. Like you said, you and Phil said, they should have taken that run at him, but they were excellent in letting him just tell his lies. And the more he told, he doesn't realize it, the more he's sinking into like quicksand, and it's over for him.
100%. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime, true crime from a police perspective, you're in the right place. And if you're not subscribed, hit that red subscribe button on the screen. Give us a thumbs up. Hit the like button. Share us with your friends and your family. If you want to contribute to us financially, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels, and we also have a YouTube channel membership. You can join our YouTube channel members, and we have 5 different levels of that. We appreciate all of our fans, our friends, our subscribers that make this show possible. This is the search warrant that they did right after they found those photographs on his phone. And in that, the warrant for the cell phone, the second part of that, which was the photos, the large amount of photos were backed up on Google, I believe it was. And those were the ones that were even more damaging than what the detectives found that night. So I think they did a good job. I think they did the right thing. And once they saw, he gave them permission to go into his phone, and they established probable cause. A judge wants to hear that once I discovered the photos and I established probable cause, I stopped looking at them, I turned off the phone, and I filed for a search warrant based on what I had seen. And what judge would say, oh, that's horrible? Most judges would say, officer, that was very professional. I'm going to grant the search warrant for the second part of this. Mike, I got to push you back on the screen. Mike, your thoughts?
Oh, Bill, I agree. If a judge is sitting there at trial and they're arguing over, what a detective did by getting consent, and then there was probably already written down also probably 2, but at least 1, consent, and then going to a judge to get a search warrant. That's what judges want police to do when they actually have the time and they actually have probable cause, because they're not out on the street, in uniform, investigating crime like that, where there's no judge around or anything like that. No, this is detectives investigating, and they're asking the judge for a search warrant. He grants the search warrant. 9 months later, 10 months later, the trial judge is now going to say, no, like second guess that first judge who thought that the first police officer, Tagler, did a good job. That's not going to happen. I have not seen that ever happen It's not going to happen. That's exactly what we want police to do, is follow the law. And Detective Tagler was 100% professional.
You know, a lot of you folks in the chat are talking about Jennifer Soto. And I have been one of the content creators on YouTube that have been annoyed at the fact that she has not been charged, that they're apparently not going to charge her. And I think at least in the first trial, if they possibly can, they'll use her as a witness, and maybe even in the homicide trial. But it is baffling to me as to why she's not being charged. Mike, your thoughts?
Bill, it's strange. I think they don't want to charge. I'm thinking maybe tactically, I don't know, that maybe they're thinking about charging her in the future. Remember, there's no problem with the statute of limitations. You got years, so they can take their time. But I think that they don't want her to charge her as a co-conspirator, and say grant her some sort of limited immunity to testify. I don't think they want to do that. I think they just want to call her to the stand, and maybe she'll take the fifth. Who knows? We'll see what happens. Maybe she'll probably have an attorney in the courtroom with her. But I think they just want to see what they can get out of her without granting her any sort of immunity. Remember, if the prosecution calls her and they don't grant her immunity, and she's just a regular witness, she's got to be truthful. And if there's anything that she says that they know is an actual lie, they can get her for even perjury in the future. If she's called and then the defense is going to have a run at her anyway. And of course, it's going to be a mess, because the defense is probably going to try to imply that she had something to do with this and not him. Then if the defense calls her as a witness, there's no way the defense can actually give her immunity. They're not empowered to give her immunity. I think she's in a tough spot right now. I'm glad she is, but I think the prosecution just wants to see tactically how far they can go and get some useful information out of her without making any sort of deal. And I'm hoping that probably in 2026, when the two cases are over, they then charge her with some sort of at least conspiracy for child abuse. I'm not sure, but I think that's where they're going.
Yeah, I think many people that follow this show, many people that have been following this case, are equally as baffled as I am as to why watching that interview with her was so painful. When the detective confronted her with the fact that you told him he should get an attorney. How can you think that way when the victim of all this was your daughter? How could you be advising him to get an attorney? It didn't make any sense. And when he showed her the bad pictures, her reaction wasn't very believable as a mom, as a mother. How a good mother would react to that. It just it didn't make a hell of a lot of sense, Mike.
It didn't. She saw at least one picture, and she said, she acknowledged, that is Maddie and that is Stephan, and it came from his phone, but she didn't have any sort of visceral reaction, not shock, not I'm dumbfounded, not I'm angry, not upset that how could this happen to my baby? How could I not know this? It seemed a very like intellectual in a weird way, as if she was kind of like thinking, well, possibly it's I don't know what's going on there. I'm not sure. Like almost like rationalizing it when you're a parent. How do you react like that? I know everybody reacts to shock and things like that differently, grief, joy, whatever it happens to be. But in this case, she did not show any real concern, no real concern whatsoever that she's confronted with something that had been going on in her house, right under her nose. And I'm not sure why. Maybe she was suddenly thinking about, oh my God, What liability do I have? I'm not sure, but she did not react in any sort of what you consider a fairly normal range of emotions whatsoever. Very painful to
100%
watch.
agree. One Love Revolutionary. She spoke past tense. One Love Revolutionary. She never cried. You're
That's right. That's
she
right.
never did. And is that being in denial, or is that emotionally? She don't have the emotion to cry. Maybe she just didn't feel it to cry. It seemed like she felt more for Stephan Stern's than she did for her daughter. More concern for Stephan Stern's. One Love Revolutionary. She was so insecure, she didn't want to lose him. I think you're right up on that. You know, Lakeside Lawyer. Frankly, JS aligned herself with Stephan from the beginning by saying we dropped her off at school. You're right. She lied about that.
That's right. That's right.
She was down with the lies in the beginning. Remember that? Jazz Muscolini. Watching Stephan Stern in the background crack his knuckles when Madeline's mom voluntarily did a news interview was absolutely pointing the finger at himself right off the bat, in my opinion. Jazz Muscolini, you know, there's always like signs, but fortunately or unfortunately, law enforcement sees those signs and they take note of those signs, but they need much more than those signs in order to charge someone, in order to build a case against someone. I mean, just looking at Stephan Stern's body language, everyone on this earth wants to, you know, they want to grab him and put handcuffs on him. We'll put it that way. That's because his guilt is screaming at you, Mike.
Yeah, Bill, that's the thing. In hindsight, when we we see things with 2020 vision. So after you realize what has been going on, and then you go back and you look at the interviews that she'd given, that Jen had given to the newspaper reporter, news reporter, and he's in the background, you know, doing things, hovering around, cracking his knuckles, whatever. And then he's interviewed and he's got the tears and he's mumbling and crying. We see it in hindsight as, oh my God, that's a sign. But while it's happening, you know, the police, they've got a missing girl. So maybe, and they're listening to what the people are saying, maybe not so much as how they're saying it, but they're looking for tidbits of information, times, dates, location. Who would she be with? Has she ever done this before? You know, all those little tidbits of information. They're looking for the survival of that girl, get her back as quick as they can. And they're not actually at that time, perhaps, thinking so much about who here, which one of these two people may have done it. Hours later, when they start to check out stories, then they start to review everything they know, and they'd start to see those sorts of little signs in the background. But in the beginning, it's Maddie's survival and getting information as quickly as they can to find her. That's what they're concentrating on.
Absolutely. JPL, Jay the Stelladoro. It seems like so many people had like a little heads up of what was going on with Stephan Stern, but nobody did a thing to help this child. You know, JPL, Jay the Stelladoro, unfortunately, that's the way it is in a lot of these cases. People turn a blind eye. People don't want to get involved. I was amazed with this case that the school saw no signs of it because it had been going on for about 3 years. And the school saw no signs of it. And I'm not blaming them, but I would imagine they're professionals. Someone in the school would have noted something or saw something that they found really bizarre with Madeline Soto's behavior, but there was never a report from the school. And, you know, we talk about gatekeepers in this world, and gatekeepers are people that by law have a duty to report things. And if they don't, they can be charged with a misdemeanor. Some of those gatekeepers, obviously police, firemen, nurses, doctors, school teachers, guidance counselors, psychiatrists, psychologists, anyone who comes in contact, that's a professional that comes in contact with children. They are required, and we call them gatekeepers. They're required to report it. And no one reported this at all. And again, I can't tell people what they saw or didn't see, or indict someone for not seeing something. But it's a little bit strange to me that no one saw behavior that indicated something was very wrong with Madeline Soto. Mike?
Yeah, unfortunately, with all the mandated reporters we have, and you could see it on any website, you go to like mandated reporters Florida, mandated reporters New York, and there's a list of like 25 categories of people who are mandated reporters for child abuse and neglect. And unfortunately, it could be that people think about things and they're not really sure what a sign may be because they don't see it maybe as a sign. It may be suspicious, whatever. And they don't want to actually report anything because they don't want, if they're afraid maybe to report something that they think that has happened, but if it's false, they're going to be accused. People are going to be angry at them. There's a recent case in Connecticut with a gentleman who was found in his home, emaciated. He was locked up in his home for 20 years. And there had been several reports made to the police. And somewhere along the line, the case fell through the cracks. And so that's a hard thing because you have all these people that are mandated and you think children are safer because of that there's so many eyes looking out for these children. And then you realize, no, you can mandate whatever you want, but what happens in reality is a totally different thing. And so sadly, people may have had some thoughts about what was going on with Madeline at home, but they never thought about it enough to come forward and actually make a report. And that's sad.
For sure. Kelcher Cambridge from the chat. Stern doesn't want cameras in the court, but he was using his camera and his phone to videotape. Kelcher, you're 100% right. Isn't that sort of an irony here? That, oh, by the way, the judge ruled that cameras can be in the courtroom and that the courtroom will be open during this trial. So that motion by the defense was already denied by the judge, which I think is great because you're right. The irony that this guy, what he did, and I won't spell it out because YouTube doesn't like that, but he didn't want a light shown on him. You know, what do they say? To keep the truth, shine a spotlight on it, right? And that's maybe what the public is demanding in this case. We want a spotlight shown on this horrible incidents, you know. And again, I must say this, Stephan Stern is presumed innocent till proven guilty, but the state is getting 2 shots at him. One on May 5th for the SA case and one on September 22nd for the murder. So it's difficult with all of this this evidence. Tamika Riley, I just want to put up your comments on the screen. Tamika Riley, I'm a mandated reporter, and it's hard and no protection for you. If you're not comfortable or strong, I understand why people wouldn't report. Tamika, I understand too. I really do. I'm not trying to say that it's simple. That's you put yourself out there when you do it. And I'm sure people report things that turn out to be wrong, but they're not supposed to be penalized for that. That you gave a good, honest, your integrity to report something that you thought was wrong. And if there wasn't there should be no, you can't be, I don't think you can be sued. I'll put it that way. Mike?
Yeah, Billy, if you are, not doing something maliciously to try to, libel someone to death, defame them in any sort of way, shape, or form, if you have any sort of reasonable grounds to believe that what you're saying is true, I don't think that you'd be held liable. The problem is, just because you may not be held liable at the end doesn't mean someone cannot make your life hell by having you hire your own attorney and defend yourself. You would hope that whatever agency you work for as a teacher or as a doctor, nurse, social worker, that you would be backed up and represented and indemnified by your by your organization, be it a city, county, state, whatever. but they could possibly make make your life hell for a while. But it is difficult because I look at what we go through in New York City. You have so many cases, and the child welfare people, they're understaffed. They don't have any sort of police power. If a person doesn't cooperate with them, they cannot, like, they're not like detectives and they can bring them in for investigation and arrest them for obstructing governmental administration. They don't have enough real power to do what they really need to do. It's sad. They're underfunded and understaffed.
Mike, one thing that I always remember from the NYPD patrol guide, if I remembered anything, was that no child removed by the NYPD for something like this, a case like this, will ever be returned to that family by any member of this department. That word for word, it said
Right.
that. And I said, wow. And I had that incident where child welfare said, oh, we find that this is unfounded. You can give the child back. I said, I'm not giving the child back. I said, it clearly says in my job that I'm not allowed to do that. You want to give the child back? You physically hand the child back to the family. I'm not party to it. Oh, well, you could say how ridiculous it is, but clearly states it in my job that I'm not allowed to return the child back. You want to give the child back? That's your call. It's your judgment. And, I don't have to be the one. I felt good about that. Debbie Van Martyr. In school some days, she cried, had panic attacks, slept in class, etc. Yet no one thought to question what was going on outside of school. Shameful. Yeah. Debbie, we can all be judgmental. And yeah, I would think that deserved maybe an interview by a counselor. And I don't know. I would think maybe they did do that. I don't know if they did or didn't do that. But how many kids in every school, in every elementary school, have problems like that, exhibit problems like that? I would imagine there's a fair share of them. Mike?
Yeah, it goes to resources and having authority to actually make something happen. The first abuse case I ever dealt with, the parent got it, and which is the mother. They got the child back within 24 hours with an attorney's help. Yeah, they don't have enough staffing. They don't, and remember too. Think about it. I think in New York City, all the social workers that dealt with the children came out of way down someplace. I can't think of the street. It was way down in Lower Manhattan.
Poplar Street.
Poplar Street. So if they want to come all the way up to the Bronx, like the 4-6, they don't want to do that. So they'll take a report over the phone, and it'll get to them eventually. But they really don't want to come out and investigate because, look, they've got a lot of other cases they're dealing with, and usually they have their case folders are huge, and they're forced to really do quote unquote visits over the phone. And you need the parents' cooperation of the people you're actually investigating. It's really difficult. We want to help our children, but giving them the resources, giving a municipality the resources it needs to actually affect that. You'd like to think that in Madeline's case, that at least she was interviewed at least once or twice, and that maybe they contacted Jennifer. Hopefully there will be something that will come out to say that maybe the school did try to do something. Fingers crossed about that one. I hope so.
Emily Parkinson from the chat. She was talking to her counselor because of her behavior and ADHD. Okay. She mentioned that he creeped her out. Why didn't they make a connection? Emily, I don't know the answer to that. It would seem to us, looking from the outside in, it would seem that that would be a simple thing, wouldn't it? But maybe it's not that simple. Yeah, I think I would probably put that together, and it seems simple, doesn't it? But we're all asking that same question now, and the old expression, hindsight is 20/20, right? And we all can say that with many, many things. Kat from the chat, contradictory behavior from Jennifer Soto. don't do a Woody Allen on me, but encouraged them to sleep in the upstairs room together. The cat, that is so baffling, and that statement alone to me would have gotten her arrested. And as we know right now, she has never been arrested yet, right? Melanie Copeland from the chat, I believe that JS, Jennifer Soto and Stephan Stern's manipulated her for years, convincing her that what was happening was normal. No one else would understand their situation. Melanie, you could be right. But again, very disturbing. Nothing about the way they lived, even about having all those outside roommates.
Mhm.
That's not normal to me anyway. You know, I don't know if to have 4 bedrooms in a condo and to have 3 of them rented out to strangers. They're not separate entities. They're all living in the main hub of the house, sharing kitchens, bathrooms, and three rooms with strangers in it. That's not a normal thing to me, Mike. How about you?
Bill, it calls for trouble because, Jen had one room, Steph had another. You had at least 1 or 2 other people having rooms. And poor Maddie, she's consigned to a piece of the living room, which is a common area. She had like a little screen area, but she's a 13-year-old girl. And that's all she's got. She always wanted to sleep with the mother because she probably felt safe there. It felt like she had a little bit of privacy. But the mother puts her in that area so that frees up a bedroom for income. It's one of those situations where it's ripe for some sort of issues happening, unhealthy issues happening to that girl. And lo and behold, here we are. But that was really a pathetic situation for a poor 13-year-old girl to grow up in.
100%. Tamika Riley, again, thanks for the acknowledgement, but eventually you find the strength to do what's right. Well, Tamika, you're a good person and you're a great professional to feel that way. But I just being around this kind of stuff, I know how difficult it can be, and I'm not defending anyone that is a mandated reporter and doesn't report, but I just know it is not always black and white. It's not always so simple. I remember there was a term that I learned probably the first week I was on the police department. Things are not always as they seem. And there's some truth to that. And there's some falsehoods to that. But not everything's not black and white. I'll put it that way. Let me go back. This is from Law and Crime. I want to play a little bit more of this here.
Dropped her on the road to school. That was the last I saw her.
Now, you heard the detective tell Stearns that they found Maddie's backpack in the trash. That backpack was covered in paint, and one of Maddie's white Crocs was also found in the trash. The Orange County Sheriff would say that night that they had video of Stearns putting the items in the dumpster.
Here's where I'm going to be brutally honest with you. There's your phone. And I'm pretty sure you know what some of those pictures are about. You're a very intelligent person. And I don't want you to discredit yourself by saying you don't know about all the pictures that are on your phone. You understand what I'm saying? So you want to add to the list of pictures?
No. Should I be talking with a lawyer right now?
Boom.
Yeah.
There, he knew that the gig was up right there.
Yeah.
Should I be talking to a lawyer right now? It's like, this case, I think of so many cases that I've seen. There's so much evidence, Mike.
Yeah.
There is so much evidence, and he's taking it to trial because he has there's no plea deal. There's absolutely no plea. They're not going to say, plea to life in prison without parole. He's not going to plead. And then the second case is a death penalty case. So he's he's got to go forward. But there's so much evidence. It's like I used to say there's tractor trailers full of evidence. And there really is, Mike.
Yeah, look, his attorney is throwing everything against the wall that she can. Look, she has an ethical obligation to zealously advocate for her client, and she's doing the best she can. She's throwing motion after motion after motion. She's hoping she wins one or two things here, knowing that she's not. And of course, there's only one or two that really matter in the long run. She knows she's not going to have the courtroom closed, or, the newspaper reporters, not allowed in there. No, we want open courtrooms. We want open reporting. She knows she's not going to win those, but there's only one or two things that she really wants out of all those ones she's throwing out there. But she also has that, not only does she have that obligation, she does not want to be accused later on if he's convicted and he makes an appeal on ineffective assistance of counsel. That would be a ethical violation, and she could possibly, be disciplined for that. Maybe lose her law license for 6 months, or get it suspended. So the defense attorneys go overboard to try to do everything in their power that they can, and knowing that they're really protecting themselves, but they're trying their best also to zealously advocate for their client, knowing they're probably not going to get a lot of those motions granted. She's doing the best she can. She's dealt with, look, just like we talked about Kohlberger, this poor defense attorney, she's got this case. And could you imagine being handed this case, defending this case with the evidence they have? It's a nightmare, and they're doing the best they can. But, this is part of the cat and mouse game, the part of the chess match that comes before the trial. This happens. We're seeing this in the Rex Heuermann case. We're seeing this in the Kohlberg case. We see this in all the cases that we look at. That's what defense attorneys do. It's their job.
Absolutely. JPL Esteladoro. Bill, are his parents paying for the lawyers? No. These attorneys are legal aid. I want to play a little bit of the attorney on the screen.
Got a lot of case law.
I handed a packet.
The accused. Obviously, the court must balance the due process right of the accused with unrestricted access to all judicial proceedings. Whenever you're ready.
I provided case law, I believe, that you have, Judge.
Got a lot of case law.
I handed a packet that had 2 statutes and 3 cases, Rule 2.450, Rule 2.451, and then the 3 cases being Gannett Co. versus the Pascal, which is a U.S. Supreme Court case, 99 Supreme Court 2898 from 1979. The Miami Herald versus Lewis case, which is a Florida Supreme Court case, 426 Southern 2nd, 1 from 1982, and then Miami Herald Media Company versus State, which is a 3rd DCA case here in Florida, 218 Southern 3rd, 406 from 2017. So looking at those 3 prongs, which are established by the Miami Herald case, the defense would argue that the closure is necessary in this case to prevent serious and imminent threat to the administration of justice, because looking at rules 2.450 and 2.451 gives the court the ability to control the conduct of the proceedings before the court, ensuring decorum, prevent distractions, and ensuring the fair administration of justice. So as such, this falls within the court's discretion. The media in their response talks about openness and transparency as being needed to produce a disinclination to testify falsely, when in reality it creates nothing more than an air performance, as if the courtroom is nothing more than a stage.
This is sort of getting redundant because the judge already ruled on it. He's going to allow an open courtroom and allow the press in there. Joyous N, thank you so much for the $10 super sticker. Very much appreciated. I use the term legal aid. That's the New York term for public defender. We call them legal aid attorneys. Same thing. Same difference, as you would say down south, but it's the same. Thank you. We're seeing a lot of love from the chat. Katie Jean, hi Bill, I love you. That's very nice. Thank you. We appreciate all of our fans. I want to see some love from Mike too. Oh yeah, PGH Deb 412, 100% Mike. So I like that one. That's a great one too.
Thank you.
We've been after all, just gave my thumbs up. Thank you for all you do, Sergeant Bill. Well, thank you after all. Very much appreciated it. Minnesota girl. I'm just shouting out to all the chat. We appreciate all you guys. Peg Deb 412 member for 1 month. Welcome. Thank you so much for being a member. Much appreciated. Myron Sanchez, good to see you. When we've covered this case pretty much from the very beginning and all different angles, because there's a lot of different things going on in this case. And it's really a horrific case. It really is. And from so many sides, from so many, but the truth is that there's so much evidence in this case. And I expect Stephan Stern's to get convicted in both of these trials with rather quickly. I don't even think the jury will be out that long. Heather, whatever, thank you for the $4.99 super sticker. Thank you both. Thank you, Heather, whatever. It's hard to say. Heather, whatever. It's a hard thing to say. I don't know. So we take this quite seriously. Mike and I were both NYPD sergeants, and we've seen not a lot, but a number of cases like this. No, this case is unique in itself, but we have seen this really ugly side of life that only social workers and police and medical personnel get to see these type of things. And you always remember it for the rest of your life. Professor Mike, I think we did a pretty damn good job. Your final thoughts?
Just for everyone to understand that the police did a great job in this case. They followed the rules. We do not expect any of the evidence to be dismissed by the judge before the trial. And, have confidence in our law enforcement. We have great detectives, great police officers, and they do a great job. And in this case, they're getting as much justice for Madeline as they can.
100%. Very well said. Folks, again, I want to thank everyone. All you new, I see a lot of new people in the chat. Just make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. It really helps us with the algorithm. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff. Have a great night, everyone, and God bless.
One episode just ain't enough.